Well, good evening to everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Listen, you are live here on the Shake Up with Dr. Kit. So we just want to thank you all for being here this evening. All right. And listen, this is a very special month, and I want you to know that very, very special month. It is, of course, Black History Month. And throughout this entire month, I will be just uh, for once a better word, but showcasing, but just bringing some of our movers and shakers in the Black community, just to let people know that there are some amazing people out there that are doing some wonderful things and at a very selfless level, because the idea here is that all of us are in a relay race, and so we need to have this baton to pass. And it doesn't matter how well you do your job, none of that really matters in a relay. If you don't have if you drop the baton, the race is over. It doesn't matter how far ahead you are. And so we have some wonderful people that we're bringing on this month, and we're kicking it off today with a very special person. I know her. We've known each other for a while. And so I thought, well, man, there's nobody better that can really get ahead, take this thing off, kick the ball off for this month. And so, listen, I just want to thank all of you for just being here this evening. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to be a part of this show, if you'd like to be a part of this, we're just going to ask you to email drkitspeaks@gmail.com, and my team will get you on, and you can tell your story. This is the Shake Up. We don't change the structure. What we do is we just reframe everything so you can see it from a different perspective without necessarily creating, any kind of a discontent in your mind, okay? So this is what the Shake Up is all about. If you want to be considered for part of the show, just go to drkitspeaks@gmail.com. And then the next thing we'd like you to do what? We want you to like, follow, share, and subscribe. That's like putting all the good juices into this, because we try to reach out and make something good happen every week. Now, listen, enough of me. So I'm just going to go right ahead now and say I have somebody that I want you to meet. And you know how it is with me. I don't go ahead and introduce our guests because they're just friends and family and guests. I want them to tell you what they want to tell you about themselves, because I'm going to mess it up. Okay. I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to bring my guest on right now. Doc, come on in. Come on. Wait. No, you know how they sound a game show. Come on down. You know.
Good evening. Hi, Dr. Kit.
How are you?
Oh my gosh, happy Monday.
Listen, I need a happy Monday, okay? I need a happy Monday. How have you been? Been
I'm doing well. I take it in stride. I am happy to be alive every single day. So every day is a happy in front of it. The day started good, it just gets better. So you have to name it and claim it.
Yes. Okay, listen, again, I just want to thank you. Like you and I talked, and we said this is going to be Black History Month, and I just want to be able to bring on a number of our Black people of color, Black and brown people who are working so hard, who have gone into the trenches. And the thing about it is, someone like you did not go into somebody else's trench. You dug your own trench, and and what you have done is, so now you're the architect of your trench. So your trench can only be what you want it to be. And so tonight, I'm so glad that you're inviting the public to come and experience. That's a nice word. I love that word. And experience life with you in your trench.
Yes.
Life with you in your trench, okay? So why don't you just go ahead and just formally introduce yourself, and we'll call you whatever you tell us to call you, and we'll just move it right on from there, okay?
Hey, just call me. Different people know me by different names. I'm TJ to some, babe to husband, Dr. Marks in a professional environment, mommy to my baby. So I invited some family and friends, so hopefully they're on. They know me as TJ too. Hey, okay. It doesn't matter.
All right. Okay, listen. I'm so glad, because this is a very important month, like I said.
Yes.
So we want to start this out, and I want you, because we talked, and I know that you didn't tell me that you're going to do all this, and say, I want you to tell the folks out there, I use a narrative of you digging your own trench instead of going into somebody else's trench. By digging your own trench, it means that you're an entrepreneur. When you go into somebody else's trench, you are an employee. You understand what I'm saying? That's the motif I'm using here today.
Right,
so you are indeed a trench digger, and you've gone through all of this stuff here. So why don't you tell us about this trench that you dug and that you're still expanding on, what it's all about, and we have our questions and the stuff like that as we move through this. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So let me tell you, I call this a labor of love, and anyone who's ever had an unplanned pregnancy and at the end of it realize you have a baby that you're so grateful for but never planned for. So I believe the school has been just that in that regard. My undergrad is in journalism, stayed at Florida A&M, minored in psychology at the time, and decided, because it was such an interesting field, to pursue a master's in psychology at the time. So the bulk of my work since the early 90s had been in the mental health profession, working with children and families in various capacities. But it wasn't until I had my own child that I just found myself smack in the middle of a failing education system, to be frank about it. And that caused me to, dig this trench that you're saying, and to start a school. And who would have thought it had never been on my radar. So I am an unconventional educator in that regards, because my background was not education. I had not taught in the classroom. I'd only taught at home. But what I did at home was just created a monster, really, because leveraging the background that I had in mental health and with journalism and everything else, wanting to dispel a lot of the myths, about the Black-white divide, and girls are more precocious than boys, and students were not prepared for kindergarten by the time that they reached age 5. I wanted to see what that was about. So I started the school. 2012 is when we opened our doors, and seedling planted around 2011. But the school did not come into fruition until 2012. And I did that with only an undergrad and master's degree, but wanted to learn so much more about what I was doing, and wanted to give not just parents and students, but teachers, but my community at large, my full self, and with fidelity and the authenticity of having a school the way that I envisioned it, the way that I believe God has really kind of put it into my psyche and imagination to envision it.
And Roger says labor of love. Thank you, sir.
Labor of love. That's right. Hey, Payday.
Payday?
One of our families.
All right.
So when I say unconventional approach to education, it was just that. And I think I've been very unconventional, the way that I've curated curriculum, the way that I've kind of brought the staff together. They had to really kind of be indoctrinated into Omni's way of doing things. And it's Omni International School. And I'm asked a lot, well, Omni, when you think of Omni, what do you think about? You think about everything, all encompassing, the omnipotence. So I wanted God to be in every single thing that we did. And unlike most schools, we still believe in prayer. So prayer is how we start our day, with prayer, with the school creed. We go into the pledge, we disperse for classes. We say our grace at lunchtime in 3 different languages. So prayer is
What
kind of
languages are those? What languages are
everything that we do. So let me tell you a little about the school. Although
those?
we're 12 and a half years old now,
Okay.
we started as a pre-K 2 through second grade entity. So it is a year-round language immersion school. We are teaching Chinese, Japanese, and Spanish by native instructors in a full immersion environment. Talk about some heavy, just big shoes to have to fill. And you think in language immersion, oh my gosh, we are preparing our students to be true global citizens. When they leave Omni's doors, they're proficient in reading, writing, speaking, comprehension. So it's not just a tutoring session. They're actually taught subjects in all of those languages too. And we have two distinct levels of academics. We have a pre-K component that addresses the learning for pre-K 2 through pre-K 5. And we have an upper school. We are accredited K through sixth grade. We're currently up through fourth grade. So when you talk about labor of love, it's been intentional. It's been intensive. It's probably the most exhausting yet exhilarating thing I've ever done. But we get to really see the fruit of our labor too. So that labor is not in vain. Our children go on to do wonderful things, and with global citizenship in mind. So their careers are just laid out for them. They can go anywhere in the world and do whatever they want to do. Now, although we've capped at fourth grade and accredited through sixth, when our students go off and have graduated, the world is theirs. So parents have to be very intentional about where they're continuing that education. So that means continuing to reinforce the languages and making sure that students are in environments that are really conducive, to the language acquisition and retention as well.
So this is not just so we're talking about academic language skills that you are developing in these young people, not just I shouldn't say just not conversational. Not
Right.
conversational levels, because it's different when you can have an academic kind of a level of skill that you can go and you can pick up a book, or you can go and you can talk to somebody, or you can go and do some research. Now we're talking about some heavy duty stuff, and we're talking about up to fourth grade. So listen, how are the children over this time frame, K through 4? How do they kind of adjust to this?
It's been really easy for students. It's only hard for us outside looking in. Okay. When we start these babies as early as 2 years old, it's just common practice. They're going to school and they just happen to be learning in another language. With true immersion, the teachers aren't stopping to translate anything. So they use a lot of context clues. They use a lot of nonverbal communication, just to get information across to the students. So the students don't realize it until they're much older. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing that in a different language, or I'm understanding this teacher in a different language. And we tell parents just to provide a safe place for them to reinforce those skills at home, because unless you're learning the languages, you're going to mess it up trying to speak it or trying to correct the students so they get it. And the thing about learning the languages, the research shows that children can learn languages, about 4 to 5 languages at a time, as long as they're in environments that are conducive to it. So that means the children are learning English at the school. They're learning Chinese or Japanese. They choose a track. Everybody gets Spanish. But what happens once a student has reached proficiency in that second language, sometimes parents will start them on that third or fourth language. So for my son, exactly, point in case, he started learning Japanese at 3 years old. And so when he was 9, he started learning Chinese. So he's proficient in both Chinese and Japanese. He can read, write, speak, the comprehension, and was definitely instrumental in us navigating Japan or China on the various trips that we've gone. Certainly, I don't know any of the languages. My husband didn't know any of the languages. So he made sure that we were on trains and ordering food. So it's not just kid conversation. They're learning how to really navigate the world. And so the hope is that they'll continue on learning, because there's just so much rich vocabulary to learn at each stage of their development.
Oh, listen, Tracy Williams, we are the only country as a whole not introducing different languages to students in public school. Thank you for that, Tracy. Thank you so much. How would you respond to that? To say,
She's absolutely correct. The research has been there for a long time. We have neighboring countries like Canada, right, whose populations are, duolingual because they have French there and they're learning English. We have so many subsets and pockets, even here in the U.S., with either expats or immigrants coming here. We are the only ones that have this monolithic approach to learning. But I guess in homage to Black History Month, we have such a unique history in America with language and with literacy altogether. So when you think about, Blacks in general and kind of where we've come from as a whole, I coined what we call a facticity of feet, or feet factor. I like to say that despite enslavement, or, despite inequities and systemic things that we've had to deal with, or these inveterate social problems, we've still mastered and overcome so much, just despite Jim Crow laws and deliberate segregation and inequalities that still bother us to this day. Not just income inequalities, but we see the disparities in education too.
Yeah, we do. Listen, just thinking about this monolithic approach to lifestyle with respect to the Black History Month. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, can you answer, just talk to this, where are, how did you think we got there? Because we've been here now for 400 years or so, So how can we still have that kind of a mindset without a game plan somewhere out there that is not conducive? I'm trying to choose my words real nice. Not conducive. That is not conducive to our growth and development. And listen, and our growth and development, and our blending. You see what I'm saying? Our blending, growth and development, blending. Because you bring, I bring, we blend. We have a stronger unit going on.
Yes, I agree to a certain extent with the you blend, we blend, and we come together. I think one of the issues, and to our disadvantage, is that we've assimilated so much, that we've blended so much into other folks' standards and ways of doing things. Even when you look at literacy, and I talk about literacy so much because I've done a lot of the research just kind of leading up to it, and even, just things embedded into the school. We've done so much to cripple ourselves. We have to really take ownership of our learning, of our community's learning, and not rely so heavily on what other folk think we should be doing, or other folks' preconceived notions and limitations about what we're capable of doing. I hear all the time, because I have 2-year-olds working on a kindergarten curriculum about what's developmentally appropriate and what's not appropriate. And I tell folks, if your 2-year-old can pick up a chicken nugget or a fork and spoon or anything else, they can pick up a writing utensil. They can learn, especially when the research says that their brains are at 80% of their adult volume by the time that they're 3. Where are we misstepping with making sure that these babies have the cognitive stimulation that they need? And when I say it, just kind of goes all the way back just to the history and everything too. If you think about our history and how enslaved people were just from various parts of Africa with multiple indigenous languages, did not all speak the same language, first of all, before even learning English, and had to assimilate and accommodate for survival and learn to speak the language, although it was forbidding. You can't speak the language. We might teach you some scriptures to quote, or you might be able to, learn the Bible, because at the time, it was considered illegal for, our enslaved ancestors to even learn how to read. So a lot of the literacy and things that we've learned, we kind of had to create on our own. just listening to other people say things. So not only, did we come with our indigenous languages, but trying to accommodate for that by learning the other languages. So you hear different parts of patois, people from different areas. You hear Creole, you hear Southerners, you hear some regional dialects and all of those different things. And now it's what we call Ebonics, or, AAV, African American vernacular, because it deviates from standard or mainstream. But guess what? What happens, and when you're talking about the disparities, is that standard mainstream is still how we're standardized and test, and how we're still assessing folks to say whether they're meeting a certain criteria or not. Because back in our day, or ancestors' day, literacy or language was used as a functional tool to communicate. Nowadays, language and literacy is capital. It's currency. It's how we get to, point A to point B, and we're having a price tag on it. So we've come a mighty long way. And when I say that we have to take ownership of our learning, we have to take ownership of our learning, because parents will sometimes wait on the school system to do XYZ. They'll wait on daycares to do XYZ. But daycares and school systems are under that same poverty mindset that continues to perpetuate a lot of these systemic inequalities. And if we're continuing to kind of fall into that mindset, we're seeing the limitations and not the possibilities.
Ooh, listen. Ooh, I need to stand up there a little bit. Listen, TJ, you're really putting it on us. But listen, thank you. Oh, listen, for those of you, listen, let me take one little quick commercial break. Listen, those of you that are listening online, listen, you are so fortunate, because I'm so fortunate. TJ, my friend from a long time ago, Dr. Marks out of Atlanta, and she is a wonderful person. Doc, I got a question for you. Said this crippling mindset.
Yes.
You were more descriptive. Can you talk about that from an experiential position? How do people experience, and because of their experience, they behave because of this crippling mindset that they have?
Yeah. So let me tell you.
Yeah.
Some years ago, when I was doing the research, kind of looking at why we were where we are in our lot in life, I developed what we call a literacy loop. And we see generational cycles of this poverty mindset, how one thing begets the other. And our upbringing has certainly informed kind of where we are and what we do. But at what point do we break these generational cycles because we want more for our students? So it has to come from the social capital. It has to come, from understanding or kind of aligning with best practices from people who have thought to put all of these things into place. Researchers such as myself who look at dialects, who look at language immersion, who look at just literacy and approaches, and looking at the current divide with Black-white disparities and things that we see. It's crippling when a parent not subscribing to different things that will continue to just exacerbate an excellent mindset. So understanding from parents too, if I had not been taught literacy, or my mom had not read to me, or I'm not seeing anybody writing or doing those kinds of things, what am I passing on to my child if I don't have that experience, or if I don't have that exposure? And schooling today is a whole lot different than it was yesteryear. I have seen parents be more intentional about engaging their children nowadays when we didn't have to years ago. People that I talked to, well, I don't remember my parents reading to me. We sang nursery rhymes, we sang songs. I remember, learning the Bible, but they weren't intentional about teaching me letters and letter sounds and those kinds of things. I just depended on the school system to do it. And what happens is, if it's not taught at home, and if it's relied on in the school system and it's not taught at the school system, where are they getting it? That literacy loop, because there are deficits at home, in a home environment, they're relying on daycares. Daycares in the home environment, in that same geographical proximity to a child's home, has a disadvantage when those parents or students or teachers in that daycare environment are not kind of living up to the level of excellence. They're speaking with substitutions, they're speaking slang, they're speaking with omissions, and it's not subscribing to standard American language or English. And what happens from that environment, it's further endorsed when they move to an elementary school, and it's further endorsed when they move to a middle school and high school. So we're talking about deeply ingrained cycles and mindsets when it comes to reading, when it comes to writing, when it comes to all of that. I've talked to folks who said, well, yeah, my grandmother taught at this school and now I'm at this school and my kids went, to that school, not realizing how that home environment in that community has really kind of set them up for a disadvantage. I live in Southwest Atlanta. Schools nearby, we have C, D, F schools, elementary, and it doesn't get any better when it goes to middle school because you have these students graduating from these D and F elementary schools going to their home schools that are also D and F schools. So middle class parents have the advantage because they can afford to pay for private school. And the disadvantage and the crippling mindset for the low income folks is that they don't have the resources to do that. So they have to rely on the social capital or somebody telling them to do something differently and to expect something differently. And it's not expensive to do. You just need the social capital and know what to do. At 2 and 3 years old, parents at home, they can teach letters. They can teach letter sounds. They can teach, print awareness and book awareness and narrative skills and all of those things that are considered early literacy skills to get students where they need to be. I believe one of the biggest disadvantages that we have in the U.S. as a whole is that we don't have a standard definition of what kindergarten readiness means. We understand developmentally and gross motor if a kid's not lifting their head about this many months or walking by this many months, but nothing to really speak to the cognitive stimulation that kids really need to grow and kind of receive information and things that really kind of sets the precedence of what they learn later on in life.
Okay. Listen, you say
it's a lot of just convoluted information.
Listen, you use some words I didn't even know existed in the English language. Maybe I need to come to your school. Huh?
Please do.
Listen, so that I was talking to this young fella, and his command of the English language and his dialect, I'm talking about right here in Alabama, okay? He said that there was a time when he was talking proper, but he lost a lot of his friends. That's what he said. I lost a lot of my friends that I grew up with in the hood.
Yeah.
He said, I lost them because they thought that I was thinking that I was better than they are.
Right. And so I went. White is what,
Yeah.
You sound white or you talk white.
Yeah. So he said, in order to hold on to my friends, because he said they're there to get my back. They got my back. He said my teachers and those other kids, they don't have my back because they come from a different part of town. So he sacrificed, I use that word carefully, he sacrificed that in order to create the comfort of I'm having some friends I can depend on. My friends. How would you address that?
Right. We all, after we reach a certain stage in our lives, learn to code switch. Because I have a certain vernacular that I would speak in a professional environment. But when I'm home, you will hear the slang or you will hear things that are familiar in the home environment. I think we have to learn both. Just like multilingual students who have a Spanish history or ethnicity go into the school systems and are taught English. I think we have to do the same thing with our Black babies, our African American kids, especially when there are some deviations in what the standard English or the standard one looks like. We learn to code switch. We learn the technical jargon that's specific to our profession and career. That's different than the layman terms that we use talking to anyone in a casual environment. We have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible and understand that each environment causes for different things. When I was doing my dissertation, even I had to make sure that I easily established rapport with, you know, the people that I was interviewing at the time. Because if I went in with certain vernacular and, you know, a particular dialect, it's immediately a disconnect.
Right. Yeah.
So understanding that I know Mama Nam, and, you know, that we're all friends, and that we're from the same place, I have an advantage of being able to connect. Same thing in your profession, you know, with Black kids having Black counselors or someone being able to relate to someone, you're able to connect on so many different levels. Realizing it.
Listen,
you have to speak the language, right?
You know, listen, that is so absolutely true, because in my profession, one of the most important thing about being successful in counseling has nothing to do with the books, the diagnosis, all of these things. You know what it has got to do with? It has everything to do with what we call the therapeutic alliance. What is the alliance like in between the therapist and the client? And it's not the therapist's duty. It is from the way I work. It is not my duty to get my clients to trust me. It is my duty is to create an environment so that my client can make a decision to trust me. You understand? And when that happens, the therapeutic alliance is well on its way to being established. So now I got to get into everybody's little trench and say, okay, I can understand. I can understand this. All up here in my collar.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. But listen, let me go back to something else you said, because this is Black History Month, African American Month, and there's just so many disparities and just so many difficulties that some of our mothers have now. Some people can pay for this, and you're absolutely right. Some people can take the time to do this, but I was talking to a mother today, and we're talking about her children and some of the what I'm going to call parental unavailability.
That's a big one.
Yeah, parental unavailability. Why? Not because the parents were running the streets, but because they got 2 or 3 jobs,
right,
to raise 2 or 3 kids and to pay a huge, some have mortgages and others they have rent or whatever, but they don't. And so they're kind of a time limited. They're kind of a socialized outside of that, and they don't have enough money and they don't have enough time so that when they're done 2 or 3 jobs, they can sit down and say, okay, let mommy, play with you and let mommy teach you that. So I run into that. So how does that factor then into either creating a disparity or continuing disparity? Not that it's not a bad thing. We're just talking about the reality of life here.
Right. And the reality is that does perpetuate disparity. Yes. There are a lot of barriers, not having enough time, not knowing what to do or how to do. And I found that if parents have information, like a set of essential skills that I need to do, or I need to make sure that my child knows these things before they enter school, that they'll do it. But you don't hear that. Where is that? There's so many definitions of kindergarten readiness, depending on who they are. So parents don't know where to start. Different states have different compulsory attendance laws. Kindergarten's not mandatory. First grade's not mandatory in a lot of the states. So that means not only are students starting at varying levels, teachers have to bear the brunt of that, trying to differentiate lessons for a kindergarten student coming in, saying that there's some that know letters and letter sounds, some that are proficient readers, and some all in between. And we're talking 20-something students to one teacher. So my thing for a parent, not knowing or not having the availability, there's so many things that you can do. You start out singing that alphabet song and then breaking it down to make sure that they know LMNOP is not a letter within itself, but several letters. And then I stress to my parents too, because they'll look at it like, oh, I need to learn the 26 letters of the alphabet. Well, they're actually more than that, because the capital A doesn't look like the lowercase a. The capital B doesn't look like the lowercase b. So when I'm assessing students, sometimes there are some disconnects. They're not knowing, oh, well, that is a B as well. So there are little things that parents can do at home. They don't have to be rich to do it. They don't have to have, a degree or a master's in doing it. They just need to know what to do and when to do it, because I found that early engagement matters, frequent engagement matters, and meaningful engagement matters. And that starts at home, because even the research that shows that a school, such as a daycare or even some preschools, depending on their curriculum, depending on their beliefs and expectations, are not always getting the outcomes that they want. That you can have students that go to a whole daycare preschool system and still not be ready for kindergarten, not even recognizing their name, only knowing their nickname and not knowing their full name in print, when they see it. Right. Mammy and them are going to have to learn their full name and know what that looks like in print. And literacy is not just understanding some of the basic mechanics, but being able to read and write. So parents have to understand too. Well, parents have to kind of lean on their values and understand what's important. And sometimes we have to show them what's important. I believe that's a burden sometimes, and a responsibility that's been placed on me to let parents see that your children have a higher capacity than, what you've seen or even what you may have heard, because you have play-based environments. And, some folks think that, children just have to play all the time. When they get to school, 5 or 6 years old, is when they start learning the academic component. They're not realizing with those neurosynapses and everything else, you've missed some valuable opportunities to intellectually stimulate them in some meaningful ways.
Yeah. Oh, my. Oh, man. Couple of questions. This one question, I'm going to ask another question. Is there any way that you can make all or some of this information available to people on your website?
Yes, and as quiet as it's kept, I am hoping to be a published author this year with a lot of this information. And because I have specific information that I want to get to parents, there's specific information I want to get to providers, and there's specific information I want to get to policymakers, because they all make a difference in what we're doing and how we're doing. And I believe it trickle down, because if we put out to policymakers, hey, let's define what kindergarten readiness means. Let's define what these essential skills are. Everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon. You'll see all of these media blitz. Hey, kindergarten readiness now. We have this curriculum. We're doing this or we're doing that. And parents will understand, or at least have a better understanding what they can do at home to help.
Listen. When we get offline, I'm going to talk to you about.
And the language is just the icing on the cake. Yeah, and not even saying that you have to go as far as I go.
Good that you went, that you are the farther.
Yes.
And digging your own trench. Digging your own trench.
Because one, I know I'm a military spouse. My husband, 22 years. And as we lived abroad, worked abroad, one of the biggest hindrances for us was not being able to speak another language. Right. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the Spanish that I learned in 9th grade or the French that I learned in 10th, 11th grade, nothing is sticking. Because the research shows from 0 to 12, when kids' brains are most impressionable, is the time to saturate them with language and information. Why in the US then are we waiting until middle and high school when we well past that age? I didn't start doing my languages until they were Carnegie credits, prepared to graduation.
Yeah.
So we have to start early.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Listen, I know we're going to run out of time. I don't want to keep you all night, because it looks like you could be here all week. But listen, there's this question I got to ask you, and it kind of comes from the place that I come from in my work.
Okay.
There is something about your amness. Who am I? So, if you were to look into the mirror of your mind and say, who am I? Who is this person? And the answer is not, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, I'm a da-da-da-da. It's not those what, when, where things, okay? It's a very unique thing. And the reason I'm asking you this, because of who you are, because of who I am, I pursued this and I'm going to put it this way. What you're doing is a gift to the community that has a cost to it. But there is a greater cost if they don't pay the cost now.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? So,
oh yeah, there's a tax on ignorance and depravity.
Yeah, and then they wonder why somebody else is living a better quality of life than that. So can you speak to that? Not the socialization, but what is it about TJ that says, because of who I am doing this, and if I don't do this, what is it about me? What am I going to do with my calling? Who am I? This person that's driving me to do this.
I think the sum of my experiences in education has kind of brought me here at this intersection, because you can't go to business as usual when your conscience has been raised to a certain level. You have a responsibility. And as a transformative agent of change, I feel responsible to make sure that my community is getting what it needs, that my family has gotten what it needs, and anybody that I talk to, that I'm sharing information in that way. Very important. And, not everybody has lived abroad. So coming with that unique experience too, of, wanting languages, wanting my child to have more than I had, making sure that he was a globetrotter, a global citizen, able to traverse the world in any language and do what he needs to do. So those were important facets of kind of who I am as a transformative agent of change, and making sure that I'm able to impart the wisdom that I have to others. I think is very important, not to keep it all to myself. It's there for the masses. Are you there, Dr. Kit? I believe you're frozen. The Shake Up with Dr. Kit. I am Dr. TJ Marks. I'm not sure if he's frozen or not, but hopefully he'll be right back on with us. But he was asking a very just important question about who I am. And I think what has resonated most with me in my life and the experiences is that we kind of have to play the cards that we're dealt and understand how to really navigate in this thing called life, thinking forward, thinking in excellence, and thinking how what we do today really kind of prepares our students and our community for success tomorrow. Michael, are you there? I think we had our producer on standby as well. If not, it's going to be called a different show and not the Shake Up with Dr. Kit. Let's see what I call it. Hi, what's
TJ, listen. I don't have a clue what happened. My screen just went blank, and look like I might have lost all of my internet. But when I checked
it was about to be the Dr. TJ show, not the Shake Up with Dr.
Listen. I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to be real open with you now. The stuff you're sharing is so powerful, it blew out my internet.
Is that what it was? It's on such a high frequency.
Yeah, it is.
So last time we talked about this, You wanted to talk to me and about some into some generations, because I had spoken about my mom and my 90-year-old aunt, my
Yes,
uncle,
yes,
who had
yes.
some generational differences in the way that we were educated.
Go ahead.
So I wasn't sure. So I didn't invite them on. I wasn't sure if that was still the angle, but we have to have them on.
Listen.
I'll be back.
Listen. Your mom and all this generational stuff. This is Black History Month. They will have a lot to say.
Oh, I agree.
They'll have a lot to say. So what we need to do is to have them. No, I'm serious now. What we need to do is to have them on with you, and you talk about this intergenerational continuity that you have, or disparities
Sure.
and how do they overcome all of these things? Because if your grandmother say was from the 50s and the 60s or something like that, then they got a story to tell. They got a story to tell.
50s and 60s.
You know, about what's that now?
I said my grandma 50s and 60s, she's like that.
Yeah, they're gonna talk to you about the colored bathrooms.
Right. Exactly.
And
Sure will.
And we don't know, that's not the kind of stuff that people know about like right now. They say, hey, I'm going to the bathroom.
Even a couple of generations, when I was talking a little bit about how schooling is different now than it was back then, and how much more we're intentional about teaching kids specific task-focused skills. In the day, we didn't do that. All we did, we wrote letters a lot, we read magazines a lot, we listened to the radio, we're in Sunday school and church. So I don't even remember, being read to. I remember books at home, reading on my own, all of the Harlequin romance books that my mom had. So it was still a literacy-rich environment. But as far as being intentional with teaching specific things, I didn't get that either. So you can imagine going even further back. So this day and age, we're trying to keep up with 21st century trends with technology, understanding how much that changes the landscape of things too. It's a lot to talk about. So I'd love to be back on with them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'd love for them to be back. I'd love to have you back and talk about this. Or even I don't know if you're I don't know if your daughter or your son want to come and say, my mom made me. But listen, we got cut off when, just as you were talking about learning with games. Okay, thank you, Dr. Marks, for the exceptional leadership and commitment to our children's education. We appreciate your hard work and education. We thank you, Learning with Games. Go ahead and respond to this person right here. Will you?
I appreciate it. When I tell you this is a heart's work, and again, how I kind of fell into education, that it was not, I didn't feel that it was my calling, of course, having gone the routes that I did with journalism and psychology and everything else. But I do recall in 2011 having gone through just different school settings with my son, wanting something different, needing something different, because we were constantly driving outside of our community to find what we felt were high caliber schools. I'm like, Lord, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And that small voice, open a school. I'm like, oh, sir, not me. This is me asking, what else can I do?
You got the Jonas syndrome, huh?
Just that hankering. So, I fasted for a whole week, nothing but water and some bread and oil, to make sure that when I'm hearing something, that I'm hearing it clearly, because I didn't want to go out on this mission alone. I wanted to make sure that, he's making my cricket path straight, and that I was able to
I like that.
Good job with what I needed to do. Because at the time, I was driving an hour away to a Japanese immersion school system for a 4-hour school day. I live here in Southwest Atlanta, and I'm driving an hour away for a 4-hour school day. Luckily, I was doing some consulting at the time that I was able to stay in that area. But while I was in that area, I was at the library developing business plans and everything else, because when I asked the teacher if she felt that my son was being maximized to his highest potential, and she said, well, he loves to teach the Japanese students English. It's like, well, how is he being challenged? And at that time, I knew I had to do something different, because he was reading words and things at 2, and reading at 3, and chapter books by 4 years old, doing mental math in his head by 3. So of course he was over prepared for a standard kindergarten environment that I would not dare have put him in. He would have been labeled a behavior problem and everything else. So when I opened the doors to our school, he was able to do what he needed to in a full immersion environment with the teachers. The kids, even now, are learning multiple grade levels above their public school counterparts. So there's a lot to be had, and our school has a small teacher-student ratio. And the beauty of it, that I was able to cultivate and curate all of the things that I felt was ideal. Everything that I felt was ideal at the time, because we have prayer in school. We're saying our school creeds. Not only are they learning the languages for the bulk of their day, we have enrichment classes for our babies. We have well-being classes. Who does well-being classes at this stage and age? So we want our kids to be fortified with a great sense of self. We want our students to be assertive. We want them to have the coping skills that they need to get through day to day. We're also teaching health from a real African-centered perspective too, and that health goes into agriculture. Where are they teaching the agriculture? So we're learning how to read labels and what's organic and not organic. When do I plant certain seeds? What times of the year do I plant it? How to do pH and soil test and all of these other things at elementary level. Our babies are learning how to read and write music through a music class. And of course, Spanish is integrated as a third language. So they are completely trilingual once they come out. They have an art class. So they're learning art theory, genres of music, all of this beginning as early as kindergarten. So very robust curriculum. We're doing a lot, and we're shaking it up, Dr. Kit.
Okay. Yeah, shaking it up. Listen. It's been good. I know. We're right about that time, but this has been. Kimberly Powell says, "Go, Dr. Marks. You inspire us daily."
Thank you. I see we have some parents on. Woo-hoo.
I'm the international. It's history in the makeup. History's here. We appreciate
here, right?
Mark, and all you do to uplift our community through education. And the thing I like about your school, it is, if I can use this word, holistic approach.
Absolutely.
Very holistic and systemic. It pulls all the parts together, and there's this interdependency in all the parts. It seemed to me like your school is like a jigsaw puzzle. Something can only fit perfectly or appropriately in one place. But guess what? All the other parts that's touching other parts, that's touching other parts, that's touching other parts, that's touching other parts. By the time you're done, that one piece, if missing, from your puzzle, okay, will impact everything else all the way out to the edges.
I appreciate that, Dr. Kit. And I believe the future is here. I have on my tagline, my email, in a time of drastic change, it is the learners who inherit the future, because the learned usually find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. Something by Eric Hoffer. And I believe that wholeheartedly.
All right. Listen, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just for being here with us. I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge. I'm glad I know you, so I can always pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what do I need to do? I'm stuck." I'm stuck. How can I help?
Use me, call me. I am available. Let me know what you need.
I know. Listen. When you're done,
having me, it's been a joy.
Yeah. Okay, listen. When you're done, don't just go home.
I got my babies on there. Hey, y'all.
Okay. Listen. You must be quite a person if they're following you all over the place.
I say, hey, I'm going to talk to Dr. Kit coming up this Monday. Please join me.
There you go. Listen, I'm going to shut it down here at this end, but please don't go away. There are a couple of things I need to just run by you, okay?
Sure.
Listen, and thank you all so much, those of you who joined us online, and thank you for Dr. TJ Marks those of you who were on here with her, supporting her, I know you supported her. You didn't support me, you supported her. Listen, that's the way it works. If you support one who supports the other, then you support everybody. Okay, so that's that's the kind of a key. That's the way we need to do this in the world that we live in right now. So listen, we're thankful that for you just being here. We had a little bit of a hiccup there at one point where I lost service, but I'm just so glad that we were able to come on back and just continue doing what we started out doing. If you'd like to, if we'd like for you to follow, share, and subscribe. Like, follow, share, and subscribe. That is the mainstream of what we do. That is like the central nervous system. What we do want the message to get out. In other words, this is the shakeup. When we make shakeup, when we make shakes, or whatever we make, we put it in the blender, we blend all of this, we get the smoothies. What we do, we make enough for 1 day, 2 days. And when we put it in the refrigerator, it kind of just sitting there, all the good stuff just settle to the bottom. And to get that, we got to shake it up, shake it. And we get that mixture, and we're getting all of the good ingredient at the same time. That's what we do here. We don't change the structure. We just change another way of being impacted by the information and being impacted by, so that you can see yourself in a new way, a reframed way. You put an old picture in a new frame. The picture looks beautiful. Same picture, different environment, different mental environment. And we just want you to continue to be a part of it. So like, share, and subscribe, to be considered for a part of this show. Yeah, you heard me say I'm going to bring, Dr. TJ back with her generation of mother and grandmother, because we're going to learn a whole lot. Even if we go outside of African American month, it doesn't matter. If we go into March, that's fine with that too. But listen, to be considered for a part of this show, to be on this show, just call Dr. Kit Speaks at gmail.com. And my team will get you on there before you know that you even answered your email, okay? We'll get you on there. We'll do that because we want to hear from you what you have to say. It is so important that if it is not said, okay, by you, it can't be said by anybody else. So thank you so much. Be good to yourself. May God bless you. Give yourselves a good night. Be safe. And we'll see you again next Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time, when we'll have another episode of continuing, focusing on the Black History experience. We're not going to call it a month. It's an experience. All right. So we'll see you then. Be good. Have a good night. Bye-bye.